The first hit landed before anyone spoke. Sergeant Ronan Brick Callahan's fist slammed into Dr. Elijah Vanguard's jaw with a sound that cut through the Chicago wind, sharp and brutal. Blood sprayed across the American flag hanging above the 19th District gate, staining its white stripes a deep red. The officers behind him laughed as if violence were a sport. Callahan grabbed Eli by the collar, his breath thick with whiskey. "You think you can walk up here like you own the place?" he barked. Officer Lena Moreau lifted her phone, camera already rolling. "Southside cleanup, live and unfiltered," she said, smirking at her screen as comments began to flood in. Ortiz knelt, pretending to search Eli's pockets but slipped 2 small packets of heroin into his coat. The rookie, Jamal Hayes, froze in disbelief, his brown eyes darting toward Eli, blinking a coded SOS in Morse. Eli didn't move. He didn't shout. He didn't even flinch. He simply stood there in the cold, blood trailing from his lip, eyes steady on Callahan, behind that calm stare. His contact lens cameras captured every frame, and the AI embedded in his watch uploaded it all directly to Quantico, to the men around him. He looked like an unarmed black man out of his depth, to the Bureau. He was a silent witness collecting everything they needed to burn the blue wall to the ground before diving into this story. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, hit subscribe and give this video a like now. Let's go back to that freezing Chicago morning where justice began with a single punch. Callahan's boots crunched on the salt-stained pavement as he stepped closer. "You got a name, pretty boy?" he said, sneering. Eli's silence only angered him more. The officer's hand shot out, gripping Eli's chin, forcing his eyes upward. "You hear me talking to you?" Another hit came, across the face this time. The slap echoed off the concrete walls of the precinct. Blood splattered on the snow. Lena's laughter filled the air. "He bleeds easy," she said, angling her phone for a better shot. "Maybe the internet will teach him how to respect a badge." Her feed surged past 80,000 viewers in seconds. Ortiz opened Eli's wallet, flashing a platinum card and a thick stack of cash. "Drug dealer," he announced. "Got him." He shoved another bind into Eli's pocket for good measure. Jamal's throat tightened, his breath quick and uneven. He wanted to speak but couldn't. His body trembled, but his eyes stayed locked on Eli's, searching for direction. Eli gave him one small nod. It was enough. The wind bit hard now, snow dusting Eli's shoulders. He could taste metal in his mouth. Callahan leaned close, voice low and venomous. "You die here. Nobody cares. We'll write it up. We'll move on." He pressed his thumb into Eli's cheek, forcing him to face the flag. "This is my country. You hear that?" Eli met his gaze and finally spoke, voice calm but cold. 90 seconds. Callahan frowned. "What?" Eli's lip curled in a faint, bloody smile. "You've got 90 seconds left." The words were so quiet the others almost missed them. Ortiz looked up, confused. Lena lowered her phone for a moment. Jamal blinked again, realizing something was coming. Inside the precinct, behind bulletproof glass. The front doors swung open. Captain Sofia Delgado stepped out, her breath fogging in the bitter air. She froze at the sight, her officers circling a bloodied man. The flag streaked red, the phones out, streaming. "What the hell's going on out here?" she demanded. Callahan turned toward her, unbothered. "Got a trespasser. Cap? Might be dealing. We're taking care of it." He raised the wallet, flashing the cash like proof. Sophia's eyes locked on the wallet's texture, dark green alligator skin, a model she'd seen before. Her stomach turned cold. "Brick," she said quietly. "Drop it." He laughed. "You serious? It's evidence." He flipped it open to show her. The laughter died. Inside gleamed a gold FBI badge beside a document sealed with the emblem of the city of Chicago. The title read, Appointment of Dr. Elijah Vanguard as Chief of Police. Chicago. For a long second, nobody moved. The cold wind howled through the gate, lifting the torn edge of the flag. Callahan's face drained of color. Lena's phone slipped from her hand and hit the ground. Screen cracked, but still live. The chat exploded with disbelief, comments flooding in. That's the new chief. Oh my God, they hit the chief. Jamal's breath came out in a shudder. He whispered, Sir, barely audible. Eli raised his head slowly, his voice carrying across the yard. Captain Delgado, he said evenly, you are relieved of duty effective now. I'm in command. Sophia blinked, then nodded, her voice shaking. Yes, sir. Callahan stumbled back, muttering, No, this can't. He looked around for backup, but every officer watching from inside had frozen at their windows. Eli took one step forward, cuffs still cutting into his wrists. You wanted to see who owned this house, he said quietly. Now you know. His voice was low, deliberate, and each word landed like a hammer. Ortiz backed away. Novak lowered her rifle. Jamal dropped to one knee, eyes wide with guilt and relief. The LED billboard across the street flickered, then came to life. FBI logo, then live footage of the assault streaming from Lena's phone. Millions of viewers now watched what had begun as a simple act of arrogance. Eli stood taller, shoulders squared, blood drying on his cheek. He turned toward the flag still stained from his blood, eyes fixed on it like a man looking through time. This flag bleeds today, he said softly, his voice steady despite the pain. So it won't bleed tomorrow. The words echoed off the concrete, caught by every microphone and camera. For a moment, even Callahan stopped breathing. He looked at the man he'd just beaten, realization dawning too late. The ring on his hand, engraved with BW-19, slipped off and rolled into the gutter. Then came the hum of engines. Across the street, two unmarked SUVs appeared, their windows tinted black, doors opened in unison. Federal agents stepping out, weapons lowered but ready. Drones lifted overhead, scanning the scene. The live stream audience shot past 2 million. Reporters began calling the precinct switchboard, demanding statements. Chicago's airwaves lit up in chaos. Callahan stumbled backward, voice breaking. You set us up. Eli's answer was calm, almost gentle. No, Sergeant, you set yourself up. I just pressed record. His watch pulsed once more, transmitting the last packet of data, the assault, the drugs, the names, all of it locked, encrypted, and archived. Behind him, Sophia whispered, Dear God. The agents crossed the street. Lena was crying now, trembling as her phone continued to stream, her viewers watching her unravel in real time. Jamal stood, silent tears streaking his cheeks. Ortiz and Novak dropped their weapons, their faces hollow. Eli turned toward them one last time. His shirt, once white, was now streaked with crimson. You wanted to know who I was, he said, but you never asked what I came here to do. He looked at the flag again, then back at Callahan. I came to end the wall you built. And as the agents surrounded them, the sirens began to rise across 63rd. The live stream counter hit 3 million somewhere, in offices and homes across America. People stopped scrolling and stared. They had just watched the moment the blue wall cracked, and the man who broke it didn't need to shout. He just stood there, silent, as the city began to change for 11 minutes. Dr. Elijah Vanguard said nothing. The cold air stung his face. Blood dried along his jaw, and the wind carried the metallic scent of his own patience. Around him, chaos pulsed, the officers shouting, the hum of drones above, the murmurs from a growing crowd, but inside Eli's mind, Everything slowed. He was diagnosing a system, not reacting to it. He cataloged each detail with clinical precision. Sergeant Callahan's right hand trembled slightly between gestures. Withdrawal symptoms. The gold BW-19 ring had fine scratches along the edge. A family heirloom, worn smooth from years of violence. Officer Ortiz's hands twitched near his pocket every few seconds. A nervous tick of guilt. Lena Moreau's phone was cracked, but still streaming. Her audience surging past 3 million. Her pupils were dilated. Adrenaline, fear, shame. Rookie Jamal Hayes stood rigid, eyes darting between the ground and Eli. His lips pressed tight, a single bead of sweat cutting down his cheek despite the cold. Eli caught it all. Every micro-expression, every hesitation, feeding into the recording from his contact lenses. The AI watch on his wrist continued silently parsing speech patterns, body angles, heartbeat irregularities, building profiles in real time. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was evidence gathering at the molecular level. Callahan barked at Ortiz to shut down the live stream, but Ortiz only hesitated. "Sir, it's still mirrored to her cloud," he stammered. Callahan's face turned a deep shade of red. "Then smash it," he yelled, kicking at the phone on the ground. The screen cracked further, but the image remained clear. Blood, cuffs, and the flag overhead. Somewhere in Quantico. Technicians were already syncing the feed, sealing the data chain. Eli's plan was unfolding exactly as he'd designed, exposure through their own arrogance. He could feel the clock ticking inside him, precise, mechanical. Every beat of his heart was a metronome counting down the end of the blue wall. Lena wiped her nose, trembling now that she understood who stood before her. "Sir, I didn't know," she whispered. "We didn't know you were." Eli cut her off softly, voice calm. "You didn't need to know who I was to know what was right." The words landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. She looked away, eyes wet. Jamal glanced up briefly, meeting Eli's gaze again, blinking once. Eli nodded, subtle and deliberate. The young officer's breathing steadied. He understood. He was still useful. Eli had spotted the smallest tremor earlier, the blink pattern that spelled SOS, and recognized it as the desperate code of a trapped man. Now he saw more, fear, but also conscience. Jamal would be the hinge between two worlds, the corrupt order collapsing and the new one rising. Callahan tried to reassert control. "Enough of this show," he snapped, pacing like a caged animal. "Captain Delgado, I want these clowns cuffed and out of my sight." But Sofia Delgado stood motionless, tablet glowing in her hands. On the screen was Eli's file, Elijah Vanguard, Ph.D. in criminology, former FBI Counter-Corruption Division, awarded Medal of Valor, dismissed after whistleblower exposure of Project Scepter. She looked up, eyes full of a quiet storm. "Brick," she said, voice low. "You've just assaulted your new chief." The sentence dropped like a verdict. The other officers froze. Eli finally straightened, rolling his shoulders against the cuffs. His white silk shirt, stiff with dried blood, clung to him like armor. Callahan's jaw clenched. "You think some fancy badge makes you untouchable? You're in my district. Vanguard. My rules." He stepped close again. But the swagger was gone, replaced by the shaky bravado of a man realizing his kingdom was already burning. Eli tilted his head slightly, his tone measured. "Your rules," he said. "Put cocaine in the evidence vault, heroin in innocent men's pockets, and bodies in the lake. Those rules end today." The color drained from Callahan's face. Ortiz muttered. "How could he know that?" Jamal swallowed hard, whispering. "Because he's been watching all of us." Eli's gaze turned toward him for a fraction of a second. Acknowledgement. The silence stretched until even the flag above them seemed to stop moving. Then a sharp chirp came from Eli's watch, an encrypted signal confirming uplink. Within seconds, data from the precinct's internal servers began transferring to an FBI relay satellite. Passwords, logs, evidence photos, all decrypted by a Trojan Eli had embedded weeks ago. He hadn't come unarmed. He'd come wired into the heart of the fortress. His voice broke the stillness. "Every corrupt transaction you've made in the past 3 years," he said. "Every kickback, every overdose covered up, every falsified report, it's all in federal hands now." He turned his head slightly, and the watch camera caught Callahan's face tightening in horror. "You called this your house. Sergeant, congratulations. The foundation just collapsed." Lena began to sob quietly, the reality sinking in. "My father, he's Senator Moreau. He'll fix this." Eli looked at her, eyes colder than the wind. "Your father is already under federal review. The same wiretaps that caught your captain caught him laundering money through the police union fund." Her mouth fell open. She stepped back, shaking her head, whispering, No, that can't be true." But it was. Her live stream had already reached him, and within minutes the senator's office would be trending beside hers. Callahan's fury turned to desperation. "You set us up," he hissed. Eli didn't blink. "No, you exposed yourselves. I just gave you the mirror." Callahan lunged, but Sophia moved first, stepping between them. "Don't," she said firmly, her voice breaking. "It's over. Brick, you don't understand what's coming." She turned toward Eli. "Sir, orders?" He met her eyes, the old partnership between them flickering back to life for a brief, human moment. "Secure the perimeter," he said softly. "No one leaves this block." Ortiz raised his hands, whispering, "You don't have authority to." "I have all the authority I need." Eli interrupted. "And if you doubt it, look up." Overhead, 3 FBI drones hovered in formation, lenses glinting in the weak daylight. A low murmur rippled through the gathering crowd beyond the barricades. Someone shouted, "They're arresting cops!" Cameras turned, phones lifted. The fortress of silence that had protected the 19th District for years was crumbling under a single morning's truth. Eli's jaw tightened as he studied the faces before him. Some terrified, some hollow, some quietly relieved. He'd seen that expression before, in other cities, other takedowns. The moment people realized corruption wasn't a shield, but a cage. He tasted iron on his tongue and wiped the last trace of blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "You've mistaken fear for respect," he said to Callahan, voice even, "and silence for loyalty. But I've built systems on both, and I know how easily they break." Lena dropped to her knees. Clutching her head, Ortiz leaned against the wall, muttering prayers in Spanish. Jamal lowered his gaze, whispering, "It's over." Eli heard it but didn't respond. He looked instead at the cracked concrete beneath his feet, the same steps where he'd once arrested cartel lieutenants under the Bureau's banner. Now he was taking down a cartel that wore uniforms. From the distance came the sound of approaching engines, the deep growl of armored vans. FBI Alpha response was minutes away. Callahan heard it too. His voice trembled. "You're going to destroy the department." Eli shook his head. "No, Sergeant, you already did. I'm just cutting out the infection." He stepped forward, close enough to see the fear in the man's eyes. "You called me brother once, back when we shared a case. You forgot what that word means." Callahan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Eli turned to the flag one last time. The blood stain had darkened, half frozen in the cold. He stared at it for a long moment, then whispered to himself, "A system can't heal until it bleeds." Then, louder, "Captain Delgado, initiate lockdown protocol. No communication in or out. Sophia lifted her tablet and tapped the command. The precinct lights flickered, then went dark, for the first time that morning. Eli exhaled. His voice was calm, quiet, final. This city has lived too long behind a wall of blue. Time to tear it down, brick by brick. And as the sirens closed in, his watch confirmed the last transmission, Operation Clean Shield, active. The courtyard of the 19th District stood in stunned silence as the last echo of Eli's command faded. Then, like a slow tide, chaos surged back. The front doors burst open, officers poured out, faces pale, trying to understand what had just happened. The LED screen across the street blazed brighter, switching to a live FBI feed showing the assault replayed from multiple angles. Lena's phone, Jamal's body cam, and a drone overhead. The caption read, "Federal Operation Clean Shield, active." Callahan's name appeared first on the list of implicated officers, followed by Ortiz, Novak, and Lena. The crowd outside the gate erupted with shouts, cell phones flashing, reporters arrived in unmarked vans. Within minutes, the South Side's morning traffic turned into a blockade of spectators. Sirens wailed from every direction, yet in the center of it all, Eli Vanguard stood still, blood still drying on his collar, his expression unreadable. He raised his hand once, and his voice carried through the cold air. "Lockdown 63rd through 67th, no one leaves the zone." Delgado's tablet lit up. With one command, every exit gate sealed shut, squad cars ground to a halt. Inside the building, officers tried to contact dispatch, only to hear static. The network had gone dark. Eli's calm was surgical. He turned toward Sophia, voice low but steady. "Alpha SWAT on rooftops, eyes on every window, no weapons drawn unless fired upon." Sophia hesitated for a breath, then nodded. Her voice crackled through her radio. "All units, lockdown protocol confirmed. We're under federal authority. Nobody makes a move without clearance." Around them, uniformed men and women shifted uneasily, realizing their world had just flipped. The chain of command they'd trusted had been severed, and the man they'd brutalized now stood at its top. Eli's watch vibrated. A coded alert from Quantico, full transmission complete, live public feed in progress. Across the LED screen, the numbers of viewers climbed past 5 million. Callahan's composure broke. "You think you can hijack my district?" he barked. "You're finished. Vanguard, the Union won't let this stand." He pointed at Lena, who trembled, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You, shut that camera off." But the camera was already beyond her control. Eli took one step toward him. "Sergeant Callahan," he said, voice level. "You're under arrest for felony assault, civil rights violations, narcotics trafficking, and conspiracy under color of law." Callahan's jaw clenched. "You can't." "I just did." Eli's words cut like glass. He looked at Sophia. "Captain Delgado, take his weapon." Sophia hesitated for only a second before stepping forward. "Ronan Callahan," she said quietly, "place your hands on your head." For the first time. Callahan looked small. The crowd's roar echoed through the iron gates. Cameras zoomed in. He dropped his gun belt to the ground and raised his hands. Sophia cuffed him while Eli recited the Miranda rights in a calm, unwavering tone. "You have the right to remain silent." His voice echoed against the walls. Ortiz's lips quivered. Novak lowered her rifle, setting it on the ground. Lena wiped her eyes. Shaking, Jamal, still trembling, stepped beside Eli, whispering, "Sir, what now?" Eli didn't look at him. "Now," he said. "The truth gets loud." On the LED wall, the feed split into 4 quadrants. One showed Callahan being cuffed, another displayed internal precinct footage, officers stuffing duffel bags into lockers, flushing drugs, smashing phones. Every camera in the building had been remotely activated by Quantico. The operation wasn't just an arrest. It was a cleansing. 2 years of surveillance, Eli murmured. 300 hours of body cam data, wiretaps, and confidential ledgers. Today it all surfaces. He looked up as a news drone swooped low overhead, capturing his face, bruised, bloodied, resolute. Let the city see what justice looks like. Suddenly, a crack split the air. The sound was sharp, metallic. A bullet slammed into the asphalt inches from Lena's feet, shattering concrete. She screamed and dropped to the ground. Officers dove for cover. Eli didn't flinch. His head snapped toward the rooftops. "Sniper!" someone shouted. Another shot rang out. This one struck Lena's phone, blowing it apart in her hands. Sparks scattered. She screamed again, clutching her hand. Eli raised 2 fingers to the sky, a silent signal. 3 FBI drones spun upward, triangulating the shot. Sophia barked into her radio. "Alpha team, find the shooter, northeast quadrant." Within seconds, 2 bursts of return fire echoed, then silence. "Target neutralized," a voice confirmed through her earpiece. The air went still again, save for Lena's sobs. Eli walked over, knelt beside her, and picked up the shattered phone. He wiped the blood from her fingers with his sleeve. "You're alive," he said quietly. She looked up, confused. "Why help me?" He met her eyes. "Because you filmed the truth, even if you didn't mean to." Her tears mixed with the snow. Behind them, Jamal was crying silently too, shoulders shaking. "I didn't want this," the rookie murmured. "They made me lie. They said my mother." Eli laid a hand on his shoulder. "You did what you could. That's enough for now." Jamal looked at him like a child seeing light for the first time. Callahan, cuffed and kneeling, spat blood into the snow. "You think this ends with me?" he snarled. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. You can't clean what's in the blood." Eli straightened, his expression hard. "Then it's time to drain it." He turned toward Sophia. "Transfer him to the holding cell. Ortiz, Novak, Moreau too." Ortiz stammered. "Sir, please, I was just following orders." Eli's eyes cut to him like a blade. "So did everyone who ever destroyed a life and blamed the uniform. The uniform isn't your shield anymore. It's evidence." Ortiz dropped his head. Defeated. The news choppers hovered closer now, their spotlights slicing through the cold air. Thousands watched from behind barricades. Chicago had seen riots, protests, corruption trials, but never this. Never the public humiliation of its own guardians. Sophia's radio crackled again. "Quantico to Vanguard. Federal warrants confirmed. Proceed with full lockdown and transfer protocol." Eli pressed his earpiece. "Acknowledged. Execute Phase 2. Within minutes, armored vans rolled into view. Engines rumbling. Federal agents in black jackets fanned out, taking control of the perimeter. Eli stepped forward as the crowd roared. Cameras zoomed in as he raised the tattered flag that hung from the pole, the same one stained with his blood. "This flag," he said, voice deep and resonant, "isn't for those who hide behind it, it's for those who stand beneath it." He held it high, and the wind caught it, snapping it clean in the gray morning light. The image filled every screen across the city. Inside the building, old guard officers watched from the windows, men who had served under Callahan's uncle, who had profited from silence. They saw the handcuffs, the federal agents, and the man in the blood-stained silk shirt taking command. One by one. They turned away, faces pale, realizing the era was over. Sophia rejoined Eli, standing beside him on the steps. "You really planned all this?" she whispered. "Every frame," he said quietly. "They wanted a show. I gave them one." Callahan was hauled to his feet by 2 agents, wrists chained. The gold ring slipped again from his finger, clinking against the pavement. He looked back once, eyes hollow, voice cracking. "You'll regret this. Vanguard, you can't fight the wall." Eli's reply was quiet but final. The wall fell the moment you hit me. Callahan's breath caught, and he lowered his gaze. The agents led him away, boots echoing on the concrete. The crowd shouted, some cheering, others cursing. But Eli didn't react. He simply turned to the flag still fluttering in his hand and whispered, "This is where it starts." As the convoy rolled out and the gates of the fortress closed behind them, the LED screen showed one last image. Callahan's mugshot beside the words, "Operation Clean Shield, Phase 1 complete." Eli looked out over the sea of faces, then back at the building that had once been the heart of corruption. For a brief second, the wind fell silent. Then the chant began, rising from the crowd, low at first, then louder. "Vanguard! Vanguard!" It rolled down Halstead like thunder. Sophia glanced at him, smiling faintly. "You realize they just made you a symbol?" He looked down at his blood-stained shirt and the scar along his neck. "Symbols don't bleed," he said softly. "But men do." And with that, he walked back through the precinct doors, the red flag of his own blood waving behind him, as Chicago held its breath for what would come next. By 9 o'clock that morning, the intersection at 63rd and Halstead looked like the front line of a war. The air crackled with tension, the metallic scent of gun oil and snow mixing under the gray sky. Sirens echoed through the canyons of brick and steel, and the sound of rotor blades trembled above the rooftops. 3 helicopters circled, 2 marked FBI, 1 from Channel 7 News. Cameras zoomed down on the blood-stained concrete where Sergeant Ronan Brick Callahan now knelt, handcuffed, head lowered, his once booming voice reduced to mutters of disbelief. Dr. Elijah Vanguard stood before him, tall and still, his silk shirt stiff with dried blood. In one hand, he held the American flag that had caught his blood hours earlier, its edges frozen and crusted crimson. Behind him, armored vans lined the street. Dozens of federal agents fanned out in formation. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes popped. Drones buzzed. Eli didn't flinch. He lifted the flag slowly, let it catch the wind, and then said, calm and clear, "Lockdown 63rd through 67th. No one moves until I say..." Captain Sofia Delgado relayed the order through her tablet. Within seconds, barricades slammed shut and SWAT teams took positions on rooftops, over police radio channels. Static replaced sound. The 19th District was sealed. No exit, no escape, not for anyone wearing a badge. Callahan tried to keep his dignity. "You don't know what you're doing. Vanguard, you're turning this city against itself." His voice shook as he spoke. Eli looked down at him, eyes cold. "No. Sergeant, you did that the first time you planted drugs on a kid to make quota." His tone carried the weight of evidence, not anger. Today the city just gets to see it happen in daylight. He turned slightly to face the cameras. "This is not a takedown," he said. "It's a diagnosis. The system doesn't die from exposure. It heals from it." Sophia stood at his side, jaw tight, watching the old precinct officers inside press their faces to the windows. They looked ghost pale, the reflection of the LED screen flickering across their glassy eyes, on that massive screen across the street. The FBI feed switched to a split view, Callahan on his knees, Ortiz and Novak being lined against the wall by agents. Lena Moreau crouched beside an ambulance, her hands shaking as medics wrapped her palm from the sniper's earlier shot. The crowd outside swelled past 5,000, corralled behind barricades. Signs rose from the chaos, some reading "Justice for the South Side," others "Vanguard for Mayor." Eli ignored the noise. He motioned to the agents. "Read them their charges." One by one, the indictments were announced: assault under color of law, narcotics trafficking, evidence tampering, perjury, racketeering. Each word hit like a hammer. Cameras captured everything, the image streaming across America. In the control rooms at Quantico, analysts pushed the feed to every major network. By 9:07 a.m., every television from Chicago to D.C. was showing the same scene, a fallen police empire collapsing in real time. Callahan's breathing grew heavier. His lips moved soundlessly, maybe a prayer or a curse. Lena cried openly, muttering that she hadn't meant for it to go this far. Eli's voice broke through. "You filmed the truth," he said. "Don't apologize for light." She looked up at him, eyes red. "My father will bury you for this," she whispered. He looked away. "Your father's name is already on the list." Then he turned back to Callahan. "Stand up." Callahan hesitated, then rose unsteadily to his feet. Eli held the flag in one hand, the other clasped behind his back. "Do you know what this flag means?" he asked. Callahan's voice was barely a whisper. "It means power." Eli shook his head. "It means responsibility. Power is what men like you steal when they forget what they swore to protect." He stepped closer until they were face to face. The cameras zoomed in. "You hit me once to prove you owned this ground," Eli said quietly. "Now you'll walk off it in chains." Callahan's throat tightened, tears welling despite himself. "You don't understand. Vanguard," he muttered. "We built this place on loyalty." Eli's reply came sharp as winter glass. "No, Sergeant, you built it on fear." As Callahan was led away, a chant began from the crowd, soft at first, then louder, rolling down Halstead like thunder. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Eli's eyes flicked upward toward the rooftops. SWAT snipers gave a thumbs up. Clear. He exhaled slowly, the breath fogging in the cold. "Sophia," he said, "send the list to federal court. No leaks, no mercy." She nodded and began transmitting. The tablet flashed green. File received, encrypted, confirmed. Operation clean. SHIELD, Phase 2. Authorized. The agents formed a line behind Eli as Ortiz. Novak and Lena were marched forward. Ortiz was mumbling prayers under his breath. Novak stared straight ahead, pale, eyes distant. Lena tried to speak again, but Eli cut her off gently. "Save it for the courtroom." She flinched at the word, as if it burned. The agents pushed them toward the transport vans. Eli turned to Jamal, who stood near the flagpole, still trembling. "Officer Hayes," he called. Jamal stepped forward, hesitant. "Sir?" "You're the only one here who remembered what the badge is for," Eli said. "You stay by my side until this is over." Jamal's throat worked hard as he nodded. "Yes, Chief." The title hung in the air, for the first time that day. Eli allowed himself a breath of humanity. At 9:20, the lead agent signaled, "Convoy ready?" Eli nodded. "Move." The gates opened with a metallic groan, and the convoy rolled forward. 6 black vans, escorted by federal cruisers. The news choppers followed overhead, beaming the live feed to millions. Chicago had seen scandals before, but never like this. Never its own police kneeling in chains beneath the flag they had defiled. The image froze itself into history as the vehicles rolled out. Sophia turned to Eli. "You realize what comes next, don't you?" He looked at her, eyes heavy but calm. "The purge always comes before the healing." His gaze shifted back to the precinct facade. "There's still rot in those walls. We'll dig it out." She nodded. "And after that?" He gave a small, tired smile. "After that, we rebuild." Then his earpiece crackled. "Vanguard, Quantico Command, we've intercepted encrypted comms. The Blue Wall Network's burning evidence across Districts 4, 6, and 9. Eli's jaw tightened. "How many hours before it's gone?" "Less than 2. He turned to Sophia. "Pull everything. Get every drive, every file, every locker key. Nobody leaves until it's clean. She relayed the order. Inside the building, agents began tearing through offices, yanking hard drives, boxing evidence. The noise rose like a storm. Doors slammed, radios crackled, metal clanged. Outside, the chants grew louder. Callahan was shoved into a van, still shouting through the open door. "You'll regret this! Vanguard, the city will eat you alive!" Eli didn't look at him. "Then let it eat what's rotten first." The door slammed. The convoy engines roared. The blood on the pavement had turned to dark ice. Eli looked down at his watch. 9:31. The second hand ticked steady, indifferent. He raised the flag one last time. The crowd fell silent. "This city's been bleeding behind walls for too long," he said, his voice carrying across the street, through microphones, into homes across America. "Today, the wall fell. Tomorrow, we rebuild what's left." He lowered the flag, the fabric snapping in the wind, and for a moment, the entire street seemed to hold its breath. For the next 72 hours, Chicago became a city held in suspended breath. The media called it the longest weekend since 1968, but for those inside the 19th district, it was something else entirely. A reckoning. The precinct, once known as the Fortress, was sealed off from the outside world. Federal command took over, and the building pulsed like an anthill under floodlight. FBI agents combed through every drawer, every locker, every hard drive. Drones buzzed through hallways, scanning evidence tags. Dozens of officers were led out in cuffs, their badges bagged in plastic. The corridors reeked of sweat and panic. Dr. Elijah Vanguard moved through it all with the quiet precision of a surgeon dissecting rot from bone. He barely slept, sustained only by black coffee and determination. His shirt, once white, now bore faint brown stains where blood had dried and refused to wash out. Every step he took echoed authority, and even the guilty bowed their heads when he passed. At dawn, on the first day, Operation Clean Shield went live. Federal raids unfolded across the city. Bridgeport, Pilsen, Englewood, the old district houses. Cameras captured dawn-lit arrests. Officers dragged from their homes in pajamas. Faces pressed to wet pavement. 14 were taken alive. 3 didn't wait for the knock. 1 left a note taped to his garage wall. "The blue wall ate me." It became the headline by noon. By evening, agents found 420 kilograms of cocaine hidden in the 19th's evidence vault, wrapped in department-sealed bags. News anchors stammered over the footage. Uniformed officers hauling duffel bags of narcotics out from under the words integrity, accountability, service. The hypocrisy was no longer rumor. It was documentary. Callahan broke first, after 20 hours in isolation. He demanded to speak. He looked smaller without his uniform, his voice cracking when he asked for a cigarette. "You think I built this?" he rasped. "No, it built me. I was born in it." Then he started naming names. 42 officers across 5 precincts, 2 deputy chiefs, 1 city prosecutor, and 1 senator. Moreau, Lena's father, the man who had smiled for cameras and called corruption a myth of the angry poor. Eli listened in silence as the names poured out. Each one cross-checked, verified, entered into sealed evidence. Every confession was time-stamped, transcribed, archived. But there was one secret Callahan wouldn't reveal: the location of the vault ledger, the original log of every illicit transaction. "You'll never find it," he smirked. "It's buried with ghosts." When he laughed, Eli saw the faint glint of fear behind his eyes. He knew the ledger existed. He also knew time would make Callahan desperate. By the second night, exhaustion began to wear at everyone. Ortiz broke down during interrogation, sobbing that he'd planted evidence on more than 100 people. Novak confessed to 5 staged shootings. Lena sat in a corner of the holding cell, head in her hands, repeating her father's name like a prayer. Jamal Hayes, the rookie who had blinked SOS, sat beside Eli in the command room, reviewing footage frame by frame. "They made us think silence was loyalty," Jamal said softly. "But silence was just surrender." Eli nodded. "You learned faster than most." The young officer looked up at him, eyes red. "What happens to me now?" Eli studied him for a long moment before answering. "You'll testify, then you'll disappear. Witness protection. New name. New city." Jamal swallowed. "And you?" Eli smiled faintly, though his eyes carried the weight of decades. "I'll stay until this is finished. Then I start over too." At midnight, the city trembled again. A fisherman found a headless body floating near Navy Pier. Tattoos on the arm confirmed it. Officer Caleb Dunn, part of Callahan's inner circle. The coroner's report later showed his tongue had been cut out before death. The message was clear. Someone higher up was cleaning loose ends. Eli read the report in silence, then set it down. "They're panicking," he said. Sofia Delgado sat across from him, rubbing her temples. "We're running out of time." "No," he said quietly. "They are." His tone carried the same calm certainty it always did, the kind that made everyone around him believe the chaos still had an order. The next morning brought something none of them expected. In the interrogation wing, Sofia stood in front of the observation glass, watching Callahan pace in his cell. He'd spent hours muttering, hands trembling, jaw twitching. "He's unraveling," she said. "He'll talk." But when she stepped inside, Callahan's demeanor changed. He smiled, eyes cold. "You know your son?" he said softly. "Malik, right? 16? I saw him once, after practice. Nice kid." Sofia froze. "What did you just say?" Callahan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're safe behind your badge? Everyone has a pressure point. Captain, the wall might be falling, but I still know how to hit where it hurts." Sofia's vision blurred with rage. Before anyone could stop her, she drew her service pistol and fired. The bullet shattered the reinforced glass but missed his head by 3 centimeters. Alarms blared. Eli was there within seconds, grabbing her wrist. "That's enough," he barked. "He wins if you lose control." She was shaking, breath ragged. "He threatened my boy, and now he knows he can't," Eli said, lowering her weapon gently. "We don't revenge. We rebuild." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "How do you keep it together?" He met her gaze, voice soft. "Because I already lost everything once. Now I only have purpose." Outside, the media frenzy hit fever pitch. Every network played the footage of Eli's blood-stained shirt and the arrests in slow motion. Talk show hosts debated his methods. Politicians called him a tyrant, a hero, a traitor, a savior. The White House issued a statement supporting federal oversight. Meanwhile, inside the 19th, agents worked around the clock. Hundreds of boxes were sealed and labeled. Evidence, Blue Wall Cartel. Eli oversaw every truck that left the building, each one escorted by armed guards to a federal facility. By the 3rd night, the precinct was gutted, offices stripped bare, safes emptied, drives mirrored and shrink-wrapped in plastic. The building no longer looked like a police station. It looked like a crime scene, just after 2 a.m. on the final night. Eli stood alone in the main hall. The lights flickered overhead, casting his shadow long against the wall. The flag he had raised days ago hung framed behind him, dried blood still visible along the edges. He stared at it for a long time, the silence of the emptied fortress pressing down like a weight. Sofia approached quietly. "The trucks are loaded," she said. "It's done." Eli nodded. "Almost." He reached into his pocket and pulled out Callahan's BW-19 ring, the one that had rolled into the gutter. He set it on the steps beneath the flag. "Leave it there," he said. "Let it rust where it fell." Then he turned to her, voice lower now, almost weary. "Sophia, when this goes to trial, it's going to rip the city open. Old alliances, old debts, they'll all come for me." She gave a tired smile. "You always did like impossible fights." He looked at her, and for a brief second, the unspoken history between them flickered. Partners once, now allies bound by scars. "You did good," he said quietly. "You kept your integrity when everyone else sold theirs." She shook her head. "No. Eli, you reminded me it was still worth something." As dawn crept over the south side, the last truck rolled out of the precinct gate, federal seals locked behind it. Eli watched until the convoy disappeared into the morning haze. Then he turned and walked back inside, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the hollow corridors. The walls were bare now, the air heavy with the ghosts of what had been exposed. He touched the flag once more, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 days, he said to no one. That's all it took to bring down a kingdom. And as the sun rose over 63rd and Halstead, the 19th district, once the symbol of fear, stood silent, emptied, and stripped of its power. The fortress had fallen. In its place, a new foundation waited to be built. The federal courtroom was packed to capacity. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters filled every seat, and the silence carried the weight of a nation holding its breath. It had been 4 months since the fall of the 19th district. And now, the final reckoning had arrived. Dr. Elijah Vanguard stood at the witness stand in the same white silk shirt he had worn that morning on Halstead, cleaned, pressed, but with the faint trace of a dark stain beneath the collar. The blood had been preserved under glass, a symbol of what the city could no longer deny. He looked calm, composed, his voice steady as he spoke into the microphone. "I didn't come to destroy the department," he said. "I came to remove the disease that was killing it." The jury, 12 ordinary Chicagoans, listened in rapt silence. Across the aisle sat Ronan Brick Callahan, thinner now, shackled at the ankles, eyes sunken but still burning with stubborn pride. When Eli glanced at him, Callahan looked away. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos, body cam feeds, ledgers recovered from encrypted drives, Callahan's own taped confessions. Still, the defense tried to paint him as a scapegoat, a soldier abandoned by the system he'd served. But every word rang hollow under the weight of the truth. Federal prosecutors walked the jury through a labyrinth of corruption, falsified overtime records, drug seizures that vanished from inventory, protection payments to local gangs, bribes routed through the police union, and ghost officers paid for years after they were dead. It wasn't one bad apple. It was an orchard long rotten at the roots. When the verdict came, no one spoke. The foreman rose, voice trembling. "We find the defendant, Sergeant Ronan Callahan, guilty on all counts. 25 years in federal prison, $42 million in restitution to the victims' families and community funds." The number hit like thunder. Callahan's jaw clenched. His hands twitched as if he wanted to break something but couldn't even break his own chains. From the gallery came the soft sound of sobbing. His wife, his brother. Maybe ghosts of men who'd thought themselves untouchable. Eli didn't gloat. He only nodded once, as if acknowledging that justice was never triumph, only closure. Next came Lena Moreau. The young officer sat small and broken at the defendant's table, her once glossy hair pulled into a tight bun, makeup gone, eyes red. The prosecutor read her charges: obstruction of justice, conspiracy, tampering with evidence. She cried openly when the judge read the sentence: 7 years in state prison. Her mother collapsed in the gallery, outside the courthouse. Her father, Senator Moreau, announced his resignation minutes later, citing family tragedy. Eli watched it all in silence when Lena passed him, escorted by marshals. She stopped for half a second. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," he replied softly. "Use the time to become who you pretended to be." Ortiz and Novak followed, each receiving 15-year sentences after confessing to 5 staged homicides and dozens of planted cases. Their testimonies were full of excuses, orders, pressure, loyalty. But Eli didn't speak during their pleas. He had heard it all before. Loyalty, he thought, was the shield of cowards when truth becomes inconvenient. The last to stand was Jamal Hayes, the rookie. The court recognized his cooperation, the SOS signal that helped expose the operation. 18 months, time served, witness protection. He would leave Chicago under a new name, start over somewhere the ghosts couldn't find him, before being escorted out. He approached Eli, hand shaking as he extended it. "You saved me, sir." Eli shook it firmly. "No. Jamal, you saved the city." The cameras caught that moment. The handshake that became the photo of the day, a symbol of rebirth between the past and the future. When Eli returned to the stand for his final testimony, the judge leaned forward. "Dr. Vanguard," she said, "you've dismantled a criminal empire inside law enforcement. What do you hope comes of this?" Eli paused, his voice even but weighted with emotion. "I don't want vengeance," he said. "I want a system that never births another Callahan. I want young officers to see justice not as an enemy but as a mirror. And I want this city to finally understand that accountability is not hatred. It's love in its hardest form." His words filled the courtroom, resonating beyond the walls. The stenographer's hands trembled slightly as she typed, when the gavel finally fell. The reporters rushed the steps outside. Eli emerged into the gray Chicago afternoon, cameras flashing like lightning. He didn't stop for interviews. He stood before the courthouse steps, looking out at the crowd, citizens, officers, journalists, families of victims. The wind lifted his silk shirt, brushing against the scar along his neck. The dried blood beneath the collar looked almost like a medal. He raised his hand once, not in triumph, but in acknowledgement. "This isn't my victory," he said quietly, voice carrying through the microphones. "It's our responsibility." The crowd erupted, some cheering, some weeping, but he turned away before they could make him a hero. As Callahan was dragged away in leg irons, he shouted hoarsely, "You think they'll love you for this? Vanguard? They'll come for you next." Eli didn't turn around. "Then let them come," he said. "I've already bled for the truth." Callahan's words were swallowed by the roar of the crowd as he disappeared into the transport van. That night, the city glowed under a rare calm. News anchors spoke his name across every major network. The Justice Department announced new federal oversight of the Chicago Police Department. The governor called Eli personally, offering him a medal. He refused it. "I didn't do this for ceremony," he said. "I did it so I could sleep again." Alone in his apartment. He looked out over the South Side skyline, the same horizon where he'd once been beaten beneath a flag. He touched the scar on his neck, exhaled slowly, and whispered, "We're not healed yet, but we're breathing." And for the first time in years, that was enough. 1 year later, the 19th District was no longer called the Fortress. The new sign above the front gate read, Vanguard Academy, Center for Ethical Policing and Community Justice. The brutalist concrete had been softened with glass panels, open classrooms, and murals painted by local students. Where armored trucks once parked, children now played basketball on weekends. The air no longer smelled of fear or smoke. It smelled of coffee from the corner cafe and spring rain off Lake Michigan. Inside the lobby stood a bronze statue of Dr. Elijah Vanguard, his right hand resting on the blood-stained flag preserved behind glass. The plaque beneath read, "He took a punch so Chicago could stand up." Every morning, visitors stopped to touch the base of that statue, a quiet ritual of respect. And every morning, Eli arrived early, walking slowly through the halls that had once been crime scenes. He no longer wore the badge or the silk shirts that had become his signature. These days he favored simple gray suits, soft shoes, and a quiet smile that carried both peace and fatigue. His scar still curved along his neck, visible when he turned toward the light. The academy had become a national model. Trainees came from across the country to study under programs Eli and Sofia Delgado built. Courses in bias deconstruction, digital transparency, and trauma accountability, instead of tactical drills. Recruits spent hours in classrooms with community elders, pastors, teachers, and survivors of police abuse. The motto engraved on the wall read, "Integrity before authority," on its first anniversary. The academy hosted an open house ceremony. Hundreds gathered under the newly raised flag. Reporters, officers, citizens, and families filled the courtyard. Jamal Hayes, now 25 and living under a new identity, returned quietly under federal escort. He stood near the back, watching with pride. Sofia took the podium first. Her voice trembled as she said, "We lost our way once, but this city had the courage to follow one man's silence back to truth." The crowd applauded softly. When she introduced Eli, the noise swelled until he had to wait for it to settle. He stepped to the microphone, hands clasped, gaze sweeping over faces both familiar and new. "A year ago," he began, "this ground was soaked with blood and lies. Today, it's a school." He paused, letting the quiet sink in. "Justice isn't revenge, it's repair. And repair starts when we stop pretending the wound isn't there." The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. The people leaned in, listening. After the ceremony, Eli walked the perimeter alone. The flag fluttered above him, clean and bright, for the first time in his career. There was no static in his earpiece, no surveillance feed to check, no hidden war to fight. He was free, but it was a quiet, heavy kind of freedom. Sofia found him standing by the steps. "Governor Delgado wants you to run," she said softly. "They're drafting the announcement tonight." He smiled faintly. "I told myself I was done with politics." "You told yourself a lot of things," she said. "You didn't plan this either." He looked out at the courtyard where Jamal was talking to a group of cadets. "Maybe Chicago needs someone who's already bled for it," she added. He nodded slowly. "Maybe it does." 2 weeks later, Dr. Elijah Vanguard resigned as director of the academy and officially announced his candidacy for governor of Illinois. The slogan printed on every sign, every broadcast, every corner wall was the same phrase carved on the statue's base. "I took a punch so Chicago could stand up." The campaign wasn't loud or flashy. It was honest, disciplined, and grounded in what people had already seen him do. He visited churches, schools, union halls, and small diners across the state, speaking not about punishment, but about rebuilding trust. By fall, he led every poll. Commentators called him the man who cleaned the shield. Voters called him the man who made the city breathe again. On election night, as results poured in, the crowd at Millennium Park erupted. Eli Vanguard, the man once beaten at the precinct gates, had been elected governor of Illinois by the largest margin in 40 years. Sofia stood beside him on stage as confetti fell. His voice was steady when he said, "Tonight isn't about victory, it's about responsibility, the kind that doesn't vanish when the cameras turn away." The crowd roared. But even then, as the lights flashed, his eyes seemed distant, as though he could already sense the shadow of what lay ahead. 3 months later, in the quiet hours before dawn, the phone rang. Eli was alone in the governor's mansion, reviewing reports about statewide reform programs. He lifted the receiver. A voice, low, urgent, spoke on the other end. "Sir, there's been an incident." His hand tightened around the phone. "Where?" The answer came soft but final. "Springfield. The governor of Illinois has been assassinated." The line went dead. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then realization washed over him. The voice wasn't describing another man. It was describing him. A threat, a warning, or a prophecy. He couldn't tell. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, and rain began to fall against the tall windows. Eli stood there, staring at his reflection in the glass. Older, weary, marked by time but unbroken, somewhere far below, in the academy courtyard. The flag he had bled on whipped violently in the wind. He whispered to himself, "If justice dies, I die with it." Then he set down the phone, straightened his jacket, and looked toward the storm. Whether it was destiny or danger waiting beyond that call, he knew one thing: the fight for truth was never over. And as the clock struck 3 in the morning, Chicago slept under the legacy of the man who had turned his blood into the foundation of a new kind of justice. The last sound in the room was the steady ticking of his watch, the same Patek Philippe that had recorded everything, and the faint echo of a heartbeat that refused to stop. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes in justice.